First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got
that.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Tomorrow, Taylor. You got good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but an erratic detective is Mickey Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? No, you deal with that. You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
You apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hello, good evening from Guyana, wherever you are. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, based on different time zones. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show, and we have a new co-host, Leonard Craig. Mr. Craig has a first degree in economics from the University of Guyana, a master's in economics from the Berlin School of Economics, and recently completed his PhD in China at the Harbin Institute of Technology. Mr. Craig writes a column for the Chronicle every week. Having said that, our guest is a very unique man. Not many people in the Caribbean have been active politically, socially, and in the area of journalism from the 60s on to the present time. Our guest straddles journalism, public consultation, public activism, political activism, and also sports. And he has been in those spheres or realms of human activity for over 70 years. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're viewing this program and listening to me, not for 17 years, but 70 years, Mr. Christopher Kit Nascimento was involved in politics in the early 60s. His party, the United Force, came into power in 1964. And since then, Mr. Christopher Nascimento has been in the public eyes and in public activities. He is the public communication consultant to the president of Guyana. I cannot recall if this is his fourth or fifth presence in our studio, and because of his encyclopedic knowledge of Guyana, I'm sure he will make more appearances. So, without further ado, let me welcome the one and only Christopher Nascimento. Okay, thanks a lot for being here. I hope on this program.
Thank you, Freddie, for inviting me and that rather overwhelming introduction.
Not much people have been active publicly from the early 70s, still around, still doing things, still in the public eyes. And at 93, you certainly look like you're going to live far beyond 93. So let's start with the program. I'll open up first and then hand over to Leonard Craig. You have been in the news in a triangular affair recently. You, the former High Commissioner to Guyana from the UK and the current Prime Minister of St. Vincent. You wrote a letter on September the 28th in all the newspapers in which you took issue with the former High Commissioner, Mr. Quinn, and also took issue with St. Vincent Prime Minister, who I think is your personal friend. Now, you have disagreed with Mr. Quinn that the Argyle Declaration has not brought anything to Guyana. And I'd like to read what you said. Particular emphasis on a particular adjective. I am reading now. Referring to the declaration of Argyle resulting from the meeting between President Ali and Maduro, hosted by Gonsalves, promoted by President Lula of Brazil, and encouraged by other CARICOM countries, Mr. Quinn, former High Commissioner to Guyana from the UK, writes, and I quote, "Some think it was a good thing," that's the Argyle Declaration, "but appeasing dictators never worked out well, and I must admit, I don't see what has been the benefit of this particular declaration for Guyana." That's quoting Mr. Quinn. Now here is Mr. Nascimento's own words. "I do not agree with Quinn in this regard. There is no doubt in my mind that the Declaration of Peace and Dialogue of Argyle of the 14th of December 2023, agreeing, and I quote, that any controversy between the two states will be resolved in accordance with international law, including the Geneva Agreement of 1966, end of quote." Mr. Nascimento went on, "It definitely postponed the possibility of an invasion of the Essequibo River by Venezuela, but I left out a very important word, which I will now include and ask Mr. Nascimento to comment. It definitely postponed the possibility of an imminent invasion of Essequibo by Venezuela." I think, Kit, that adjective imminent denotes that if there wasn't for Argyle, there would have been an invasion of Essequibo. Am I right or wrong in that interpretation?
I think you're probably right. I mean, we didn't know for certain, of course, that Maduro would cross the border, but all the signs pointed in that direction. And I believe that that was why Lula, who really is responsible for having prompted and pushed for the Argyle meeting, was convinced enough to do so. Lula, of course, has long been a friend, if not supporter, of Maduro. I'm not so sure that that is the case as we speak. But I would say that there's no certainty that Maduro would have crossed the border, but there was every likelihood that he would. And that is why, of all the things that Argyle undertook to promise, the first clause of Argyle reads, "Agreed that Guyana and Venezuela, directly or indirectly," I need to change my glasses. Freddie, my apologies when I read. It is an old age problem. Will not threaten, let me emphasize, will not threaten or use force against one another in any circumstances, including those consequential to any existing controversies between the two states. The very first clause addressed the real possibility of an invasion across the border. That stopped it. At that time, it stopped it. It hasn't stopped it forever. Because, as we now know, Maduro has violated just about every other clause in this agreement. and has dishonored it. And as my friend, and he is also a friend, Greg Quinn, says, you can't trust the man, no matter what he signs. He honored this because he is afraid not of us. He's afraid of Brazil. He's afraid of his friend Lula, and still is, which is why I took that position, Freddie.
Leonard?
Okay. So I would like to continue along that that line. You would have worked with, I think, all the presidents of Guyana?
Not all. I didn't work with Chetty and Janet, but all the rest.
Okay. So before I go back to the Venezuela issue, I just like to ask you a political question.
Sure.
How our politics is sometimes very antagonistic, and if you work with one side of the aisle, you're labeled, and the other side rejects anything you have to say. How were you able to successfully work with, because I'm much younger than you guys, and I have to rely on reading, and I read a lot where you would have worked for Forbes Barnum and
I was in his cabinet, yes.
Right, and Hoyt and so on, and now you work with Irfan Ali.
I worked with Jack Deal.
Right. How does one stay neutral, or did you need to, or how did that work?
Special qualities.
I suppose because I've always been regarded not as a political loyalist, but as a professional. Mm-hmm. And I suppose my skills as a communicator have been appreciated by both friends and foes. And in these particular cases, I was the only political party I was ever a member of, was the United Force. Mm-hmm. I was never a member of the PNC. Mm-hmm. And I was a technocrat minister. I was not an elected minister of the PNC. Mm-hmm. I was a technocrat minister.
And I figure you became a minister by being recommended by the United Force, or you were selected straight off?
No, as a matter of fact, the coalition had long since disintegrated when I became a minister in the PNC. And the person who recommended me to Burnham was Sonny Ramphel.
Oh. Mm. So you were close to...
It's the first time I've disclosed that publicly, actually.
Oh, okay. So I'm assuming your friendship was very, very close with Ramphel.
Yes, both professional and friendship. I've known his daughter for almost as long as I can remember.
That's Ron Saunders' wife?
Yes, and I was Ron's best man at his wedding to Sonny's daughter.
That took place in which country?
In Guyana.
That took place in Guyana?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that, I hope, gives you at least something of an answer, but you're not wrong about that. Mm-hmm. And indeed, I am still, to this day, attacked and pilloried by the extremists in both parties, as having been a soup drinker and a traitor. It bothers me not at all.
Okay.
my priorities, political priorities, really have not been loyal to a party,
but the country.
But to the country.
Mm. So that I'm certain would be a good quality to emulate for people who aspire to be professionals. I'm not
especially in communications.
Yeah, and I have a question. I think I should bring this question forward. Why public communication? So what drew you to that?
That's a long story.
That vocation.
I began my life as an automotive engineer.
Oh, really?
I think Freddie knows that.
Mm-hmm. That's why you ended up in racing.
Yeah. Yes, that led me to motor racing. That is true. When Peter Degas formed the United Force, I was working for Sprostons in the capacity as an engineer. Mm-hmm. Peter is my uncle. Mm. My mother is Peter's eldest sister. In fact, she was the oldest of all the family in the Degas. And Peter turned to me and said, "Kid, I need your help. I'd like you to give up what you're doing, come and work with me in Degas." But then Peter bought the Chronicle.
Okay.
And he said, "Kid, I want you to manage the Chronicle." And I said, "But I know nothing about newspapers. This is not my profession." He says, "You're going to learn." I was packed off, so to speak, to Barbados, where I worked for 1 year in a newspaper that no longer exists. Tony Cozier's father was the owner of that newspaper.
What was the name of it?
I am trying to remember what it was called, and I don't remember. But it was the premier newspaper of Barbados at that time.
In the 60s?
Yes. And I did everything in that newspaper, from actually delivering papers door to door to working as a sub-editor. Came home, took over the Chronicle, managed the Chronicle, I think successfully, for a number of years. I therefore became, so to speak, a journalist. And then I won the Inter-American Press Association award for defending freedom of the press in Guyana. I took advantage of that award and went to Boston University, where I did a degree in public communications, in broadcast journalism, actually. So I began in practical terms as a journalist and eventually qualified in the theory of public communications. And I've maintained that profession for the rest of my life.
So how did the Chronicle become a government entity? It was nationalized. It was sold. Oh, okay.
Peter sold it.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I would assume that as you got into journalism, public communication, you developed a love and there was no turning back.
Well, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I found what I was really born to do, in my view. When I joined the United Force, I discovered I had a talent for both public speaking and writing. It was a talent that even when I was an engineer was recognized. And it was always thought at the time by those who were teaching me that I should have gone into research rather than the practical aspect of it. I didn't. So that is how I became a journalist.
Is there a memoir on the horizon?
Of course there is. I can answer that. I was one of the few person who he told that to, and I'm not at liberty to say who is the academic that is cooperating with it. But I can tell the viewers, he told me the autobiography will be out next year. But if you spend 70 years in the public realm, that autobiography has to be more than 500 words. It has
500 words or pages?
500 pages.
Pages, you mean?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I don't know about 500 pages.
It has to be.
You know, the difficulty I face in writing this, and I've been pushed into writing it. I really wasn't very enthusiastic about it, to tell you the truth. But I believe I owe it to the country.
And to Guyana's historiography.
Well, thank you, Freddie.
Ramphel just died at 90-something. And Ramphel was not active deeply and extensively in Guyana's sociology and politics as you were in the 60s.
No, that's true. Anyway, I've started it. As Freddie's pointed out, there is someone who is helping me, so to speak, to ghostwrite it. There's a difficulty I've discovered in that, though. When you get I'm a writer myself. And having someone write for you is a challenge because I don't like the way that person writes. He can put the facts down, he can describe what actually happened, but how it's described, how it's written,
it's not
it's not me. So I'm finding now that even though he's done a draft,
we're nearing it.
No, you're not. Because I'm having to rewrite the whole draft.
Oh my God, you rewrite the whole book then?
And well,
that is being done? But don't get the man and now the next thing you know, the man shelved the project.
No, you won't do that because he's paid. But it is a challenge. Really, if you're writing a memoir, you should not be working. You should be doing that and nothing else. As you see, I'm still working.
There have been some memoirs published recently, and people you know. Moses Nagamutu's memoir is titled Dear Land of Guyana.
Yes.
Maurice Odell's memoir is An Eventful Life. Do you care to tell the viewers what is the title of your memoir? Or you don't want it?
I haven't actually arrived at a title, but I'm toying with the idea of making it simple. Kid's story.
No.
You don't like that?
No. A memoir. The title of a memoir has to penetrate people's psychology. It has to just instantly grasp them. Like Kit Nascimento, A Life. Right. Kit Nascimento, My Country, My Life. Those things kind of raise curiosity. I have to confess, and I can say this to you because I know you well, that is a title that is not leading to anything. It can be Kit what?
Kid story.
No.
That's what it is.
Some people may not see the IT and think it's a novel, Kid story. No, it has to be Christopher Kit Nascimento, A Life, or
Okay.
Christopher Kit Nascimento,
I hereby
My Life.
announce for the public to know that I'm now engaging Freddie Kissoon to title my memoir.
Yeah,
it has to be.
So I will consult you, Freddie.
I would say My Guyana, My Life, memoir of Kit Nascimento, the full
Freddie, but I know you're not the guest, but you have one coming too?
No. I don't have the money. I don't have the money like.
Good question.
I don't have the money like Kit.
Good question.
But you know what I wanted to ask you for the 5th time you're on this program, before we get into a terrible description you made of a sitting Prime Minister of St. Vincent. But I guess you use those words because he's your friend.
Well, I'm not sure that I will remain so.
Yeah, but I don't think he doesn't have Guyana's interest at heart. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is, if Mr. Degas had all this money, Your mother had that kind of money too?
No,
She didn't?
no.
Okay. So who
The
picked-
Degas fortune was made by Peter Degas on his own efforts. He inherited a bankrupt business from my grandmother. But didn't inherit. He was brought home from wandering around Europe, having left, having been expelled from an elite school in England called Stonyhurst.
Oh, yeah, that's where David the Carries and his son went. Before we...
So to finish that, Peter came home, built the business, made the money. He used a lot of his wife, who was a Brassington's money, to finance it. All the families have small shares in it. My mother had a small share, and she inherited that share, which is passed on to me, and which I passed on to some of my children. But it was not a large amount, no.
Okay, Leonard?
Okay, let's come back to the Venezuela issue a little. Prior to now, were you involved at any time, owing to your friendship to Ramphal and others, were you involved at any time on the border issue, constructing, directing, participating in any way on any team or anything with regard to the border issue at
No, not at the early days. But remember, I was a member of the cabinet. Mm-hmm. The border issue goes back to even before Burnham. Mm-hmm. So I was always involved, so to speak, in it. But I was never part of a particular team that addressed it. Do I am now.
Oh, okay. And based on your writing on that particular letter that Freddie quoted from, it gives the impression as though you're not at all optimistic that any other solution other than the case at the criminal court is feasible for Guyana. Can you explain for the viewers how you feel about issues such as that?
Well, as President Addy pointed out at the General Assembly, this has been part of our history for 58 years. Mm-hmm. From the time of the 1899 award. It hotted up immediately prior to becoming independent, which led to the Geneva Agreement. And the parallels between the Geneva Agreement and the Argyll are quite extraordinary, actually. And the Starbuck News wrote a good editorial about that, which I referred to in the letter. But the ultimate solution to it has always been in the hands of the United Nations, was it General Secretary, right?
General Assembly.
No,
the person you mean, yeah, the General Secretary. Yeah.
He was assigned the ultimate, or that person was assigned the ultimate responsibility, which he exercised and sent it to the ICJ. We have, in my view, quite properly agreed to that. And we have put our faith online by saying we will honor that agreement, whatever the ICJ rules. on the efficacy of the 1899 award.
Dr. Gonsalves had said that Maduro is better for Guyana than the opposition. I know you alluded to it in your letter, but many of our viewers may not have read. Can you go into that a little? How you view such a statement and give us some reasons for why you think what you think.
Well, I think it's fairly simple. As I pointed out in the letter, the leader of the Venezuelan opposition, the real leader, is the lady, her name escapes me at the moment.
Maria Corina
right.
Machado.
Machado. Machado has made it very clear, and she's the first Venezuelan leading politician that has, that she thinks it is correct that the matter should be addressed by the ICJ. Gonsalves conveniently ignored that. So there you have now the alternative to Maduro in Venezuela saying, if we get into power, and they were in fact properly elected, which hasn't yet been recognized, we agree that the matter be addressed by the ICJ. She has not gone the extra step that we have. She has not said, and we will accept the ruling of the ICJ. That she's left open-ended. Which is why I think Gonsalves was dishonest in not recognizing that fact.
I'd like to, I don't think I ever asked you this question, although you've touched on Venezuela in a couple of interviews you've had, more than a couple is two. Why would Maduro, facing international sanctions, facing even third world resentment of trying to bully a small country, why did he do that? He cannot be that stupid not to know. If he was involved in a big country that has a big, powerful army, but the third world, the global south, would surely frown on a country with the third largest army in South America, trying to bully a country with less than 1 million people. What was he thinking? I mean, in international relations, you don't do something as silly as that. And on the border,
Freddie,
is the most powerful military
you asked
country.
me to get into the mind of a madman. Maduro is not sane. He's not politically sane, in my view. He has run his country into the ground. He's bankrupted the richest country in all of South America, with the biggest oil reserves in the world. Only a madman can do that, or lunatic. And that is what Maduro is. Maduro right now is fighting for his political life. He's a desperate man. And desperate people do desperate things. You can't predict what they're going to do. So what we need to do is to be prepared for the worst that he might do, which of course is to attempt to seize the Essequibo by military force. And I believe that our President, Ali, has taken all of the right steps in that direction. And to give credit to the opposition, they have aligned themselves and supported him in this regard. if there's anything that Guyana has united on politically, it is the protection of our country's borders. We were united on the threat that came from Suriname, which actually has not yet disappeared. And we were united against the very real threat that comes from Venezuela. But remember this too, that every Venezuelan, this is where we are making errors, every Venezuelan almost from cradle to grave has been taught to believe that they have been robbed of the Essequibo, that it belongs to Venezuela, that it was given away by a conspiracy to Guyana, but what was then British Guiana. And we have not yet educated our own people to understand the importance of that and the threat of it. That is what I am currently attempting to do now when I said I was involved. We need to make this issue of Venezuela a critical and important part of our school's curriculum. And it is not so, as yet.
Having worked all these years in Guyana, I don't want to preempt your memoir as such.
Feel free.
But have you attempted to, or compare presidents and their performance? Whether, okay, so let me just give this preamble. Me, for example,
Incidentally, congratulations on your academic work. You're far more qualified academically than I am.
Well, thank you. Surely. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that particular people, in the politics is an entire world of politics, and some people filter the things about politics, country, and nationhood that they latch onto and they are more interested in. And many other things that are serious to other people are considered peripheral to that particular person. So in working with presidents, having been the cabinet member of one president, and working closely with most of the others, have you attempted a comparison of whatever it is that you say, for example, the handling of the border or any other thing? Would you care to, to say how you view people generally who have sat in that office and have taken Guyana through the administrative pace?
You're going to have to wait to read my memoirs on that one.
So you have that?
Of course.
Oh, good.
I am telling you now, I am not buying a copy of that book.
Freddie, I've already promised you a free copy.
Good.
Signed, sealed, and delivered.
I want to ask you a sensitive question. I can ask you this because it happened before you were married. I grew up knowing people like you. And in Georgetown, a small place like Georgetown, I've always heard people say that you were a kind of a gigolo. You
mean a ladies' man?
Yeah, that aspect of your life. I know you had...
Which sensible man is not?
I know you had a girlfriend. I know you had a girlfriend at the corner of Charlotte and Light Street.
I did.
Yes, I know you had a girlfriend there at the corner of... remember, you're a very experienced man.
Do you know the name?
I don't know. I know she was a pretty woman. But I remember that's my area. Right across the road is Brick Dam. And then you have Dublin Street where I grew up, Hatfield Street, Bank Street.
You can get me into trouble with my wife, you know.
No, but that's long before you married. That's long before. Listen, if a man marry a woman, if a man marry a woman that he met 40 years after in his life, she can't be annoyed at what he did at 20, 25, 30.
You'll be surprised.
But then, let me move on then. Look, you said at your 91st birthday, Ralph Gonsalves was one of the guests.
Yes.
He had to be close to come to Guyana for your birthday, so...
Well, he didn't come to Guyana for my birthday. He was in Guyana at the time of my 91st
2 years ago.
birthday. I'd invited President Ali, who came, and Irfan brought Ralph with him.
Oh, okay.
But I knew Ralph before that. Remember that Ralph has exactly the same heritage that I have. His heritage is as an indentured labor from Madeira. Ralph is Portuguese, or what we call Portuguese. We share that commonality. So there was an affinity, really. Ralph extended his friendship towards me. I didn't know him that well. I got to know him when he came here.
You think you were too harsh on him when you said Gonsalves know that he's lying?
No, because it's the truth.
What is he lying about?
He's dissimulating.
Well, why? He is known. He is known a school of Guyanese leaders. Walter Rodney, Chetty Jagan.
Ralph knows what he is doing. He's not operating on the basis of innocence or ignorance. He knows perfectly well. He cannot know otherwise.
So what is his game plan with Maduro? What is St. Vincent?
Stand to gain from?
They have absolutely, in my view, nothing to gain at this point in time.
No,
but you have to remember what he has already gained. Maduro was a great friend of St. Vincent and Grenada too, and those smaller islands. When he extended the oil Petrocaribe agreement, and it is rumored and often said that Ralph was the recipient of personal aid from Maduro, and he's never denied it. I cannot say it's true because I have seen no evidence of it, but I have heard it said many times, and I have no hesitation in disclosing it here on this program.
But that's a serious...
So there's been a long affinity between Ralph Gonsalves and Maduro, to which he remains, I think, loyal. And foolishly so, because what has he got to gain now for maintaining a questionable friendship with Maduro? Absolutely none.
Yeah, well,
Maduro's on his way out.
Some people are more nostalgic than others.
But is Venezuela getting substantial aid from Venezuela?
Nothing. He has nothing to gain now.
And he's going to jeopardize his standing in CARICOM for that?
You have to ask Ralph exactly how he's thinking and where he's going. But he has another affinity in his own mind. I don't think it's a real one with Maduro, and that is anti-imperialism. Ralph Gonsalves is a fierce anti-imperialist, and that makes him anti-American.
Now, he was a radical in his UWI lecture days, right? I think he was expelled from...
He's also a very bright man.
Yes, he is.
He's an extremely intelligent man. He's very well read. He's no fool.
But anti-imperial, but before Leonard comes in again, that is an amazing and stupendous contradiction in the anti-imperialist logic of a man. How could you be anti-imperialist and your fellow country, Ralph Gonsalves, knew Walter Rodney, Ralph Gonsalves knew how Guyana had suffered economic, downsides, How could you be anti-imperialist and support a huge military power in South America, bullying a small arm CARICOM?
Well,
that's a contradiction.
He doesn't think he's supporting that, and claims that he's not, and says that if Maduro were to invade, he would be first to raise his voice against it. And I've said, that in my letter.
That's nice, and I'm sure that he means it. But his words will ring hollow if it were to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
exactly.
Venezuela has already taken several steps bordering on invasion. For example, declaring Essequibo as another state of Venezuela, and Ralph has not said anything.
Well, you asked the right question there, because why has Maduro not invaded? He has told his people that we must prepare to invade. He has mobilized troops. They are still, incidentally, mobilizing in Ankoko. They are rebuilding the bridge. They have not removed the threat. It remains there.
You think Gonsalves has any influence on Maduro? You think Gonsalves could be decisive like Lula in telling Maduro, you can't do this, back off?
I think he thought he was being that when he hosted the Argyle Declaration. I think he genuinely thought that he was playing a part to prevent or avoid Maduro becoming excessive. I think he thought he was doing the right thing. I give him that.
So you are saying, to the extent that Maduro upholds the first clause in the Argyle Agreement, to that extent the participation of Guyana and President Ali is successful or is justified?
Yes, and it's there that I have some disagreement with Greg Quinn. It's not a serious disagreement. Greg Quinn, who, as you know, played a major part in our own
2020 election,
in our own avoidance of a dictatorship here, is well versed in the politics of this area. And when Greg says that you don't do a deal with a dictator, he's right. The only difference we have is, did Argyle make sense in the first place? And has it made sense since?
Has it?
only in that, as I've continued to say, avoided an imminent dictator. It has made no sense since, and has virtually been abandoned. The conditions of Argyle, if you go on to read the clauses, agreed to continue a dialogue on any other pending matters of mutual importance. That has not happened. And why has it not happened? Because the Venezuelans, in terms of Maduro, do not intend that to happen. They saw or sought to interpret Argyle as an agreement on our part to somehow renew face-to-face negotiations. And they attempted it at the first meeting of the foreign ministers in Venezuela. And we made it very clear hey, we didn't come here to negotiate. What has happened? That meeting was meant to set up a further meeting between Ali and Maduro. It hasn't. And that I doubt will ever now happen.
I have some disagreements also with Mr. Quinn insofar as I did not think that meeting was a negotiation necessarily. I just think
that it wasn't.
Exactly. And his interpretation is as though you have started negotiation with a dictator. And I don't see it that way. And that's the way I view his presentation. And
I agree with you.
Right. So I believe.
I think that Greg Quinn, as you're saying, misinterpreted the purpose of that activity.
But I personally believe that people should
misinterpreted Guyana's purpose.
Yeah, I believe people should talk regardless because it is communication that you know.
I think the emphasis. I
don't think we should go on talking.
Yeah.
Greg is not wrong when he says there comes a point in time where you're dealing with a ruthless, dishonest, untrustworthy, dictatorially inclined individual. What's the point of talking to him anymore?
What I find interesting in Greg's dismissal of the benefits of Argyle to Guyana is the use of the word appease. And I think Greg needs to explain what type of form of appeasement took place at Argyle. Who appeased whom?
Well, to be fair to him, he did not really say that Argyle was appeasement.
He said it here. I can read what he says here. Yeah. Some think it was a good thing, but appeasing dictators never worked out well. And I must admit, I don't see what has been the benefit of this particular declaration for Guyana. So he used the word. He didn't say Guyana appeased Maduro, but contextually, it reads.
You're correct.
I think I believe he saw the whole thing as going to Maduro and negotiating with talking to Maduro, looking at different dimensions, and he thinks in a holistic framework that was appeasement.
Well, I
think that's a conceptual mistake.
Greg Quinn is an Englishman, no? And he harks back, interestingly enough,
to 1939.
Exactly, and the appeasement of Germany at that time, which, as you know, became an issue, which Churchill intervened on and said, was it Chamberlain, I think, who was seeking to appease the Germans?
Yeah, the Germans had to pay reparations.
So that's in the back. I think that's in the traditional thinking of and the back at perhaps the mind of an Englishman.
Yeah.
All right. As we begin to wind down, lighter question about your personal life a little. Lots of times people see Christopher Kit Nascimento, the man, on TV and so on, and they don't get to understand your life and your how you were brought up and so on. Would you care quickly just to tell us a little about your life,
man memoir?
your life in your early days? No, just share with us.
Kit, I would say to him,
and second,
wait till my memoir.
No, no, his memoir won't have that. His memoir would have more heavy political stuff.
No, his memoir.
And just tell us.
Let him ask the question.
Why do they call you Kit? Because I tried to search your name, and I don't see like Frederick is Freddie. Why?
I explained that.
You haven't done the research. He explained that on this program.
I told him that.
No, you should have looked at every program.
There are new viewers. There are new viewers. Who are not going to go back.
I don't mind.
No, tell us quickly.
I don't mind explaining it again. My mother was a great fan of a well-known book at the time, the Forsyth Saga, it was called. The hero of that was Christopher Soames, who was called in the story Kit. My mother therefore decided she was going to call me Christopher in order to call me Kit. So I was called Kit within the family from the day I left the cradle. And that is where that name came from.
And you're comfortable being called Kit even in professional circles?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think it's an excellent political name.
Why?
It's much more catchy. It's easy to pronounce than Christopher.
Oh, yeah. I feel that way about the president's name, Irfan.
Irfan.
It feels a little homely, kind of, to refer to him as Irfan with no disrespect or anything. It feels that way, and that name Kit feels the same way.
But could I ask you something? Could I ask you to do something for me? Just try it. Academics and journalists are curious people. When next you see the president, you're the president's public communication consultant.
That doesn't mean to say that I see him on a regular basis.
Well, when next you see him, when next you see your family members, when you leave the studio and you go home to life, could you ask all of them what you think about this title of my memoir, Kit's Story? Have you engaged them in that? Have you engaged them?
No, Freddie,
But I think you should ask them next. Freddie, just sit down to him and say, President Ali.
I've already bequeathed the responsibility of typing it.
But I would like
you step forward. You put your foot in it. So now
therefore you will have a preview.
I would like
Freddie.
the president. I would like the president to have his suggestion. I would like your wife to have you. Is how many kids you have?
4.
And they visit?
Only 3 alive.
And they visit, right?
Yes, from time to time.
Well, you don't need to see a person. There's WhatsApp and email.
Oh, I'm in communication with them all the time.
Well, throw the idea. What shall I name my memoir? It's coming out in a few months' time. What should I do?
They're the last people I would ask.
Why?
The interesting part, my children, Freddie, don't relate to me in terms of my life in Guyana the way that I've led it, because they've left early on. They've grown up in other countries. My daughter, my eldest daughter, does. And interestingly, my granddaughter is politically oriented, though she lives in the U.S., so they don't relate to me in those terms. as a well-known public figure. They see me just as Dad.
Yeah.
The operator said we have to go. Leonard, do you want to say anything before we ask Kit to wrap up?
No. I am happy to have done this interview. It revealed quite a few things about the great wisdom of Kit, and I'm extremely happy. And look forward to quite a few more.
All the young interviewers, Gildawi, Akash Prasad, they've all said that it's been an experience interviewing someone who has been more than 70 years in public life in Guyana. I wonder if there's someone like that in the Caribbean. Kit, we'll give it a couple of weeks and there's something to come up that we will need your wisdom on. Would you like to say anything at all before we close?
I'll be happy to live to 70.
Well, I can tell you that living to my age is not necessarily a good thing. Because your body begins to deteriorate. You are meeting physical challenges that you don't normally. Look, I was an athlete. I was a sprinter. I raced cars very successfully. I played rugby very successfully. Now I struggle to walk. That's not a pleasant experience.
All right, look, Kit, I always say that when I see you, I saw you the other day in Massey Supermarket.
That's a long time now.
No, that was a couple of months ago. Kit, you still look good and you're going strong.
Yeah.
Please go, please keep going strong and make sure in another couple of months, Guyanese read your memoir. That's going to be a bestseller.
Thank you very much, Freddie.
Sure.
Leonard?
Surely. Yeah.
Thanks for being with us. You were watching one of Guyana's iconic personalities and name because of the sheer magnitude of experience. A man from his early 60s was nationally involved in Guyana's politics, culture, and sports, and still to this day, at 93, still involved. That's a phenomenal achievement. On that ethereal note, we say goodbye and we see you on Friday for our call-in program. Catch you later. Bye-bye.